as and when there are any developments. Now, though, we're going to speak to Andrea Dunne-Sosa, who is the Senior Regional Director for Global Health and Humanitarian Organisation Project Hope, and she's live in Washington. Thanks very much for coming on the programme.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So what are your contacts and sources there telling you about what's actually happening on the ground?
So we're already seeing an influx of immigrants and individuals that are attempting to apply for asylum, starting to gather, as mentioned, on both sides of the border. So on the Mexico side, waiting to be able to follow that legal process toward asylum, as well as those who have been accepted and are going through the shelter process with their sponsors as their final destination. Now, of course, as those numbers increase, the resources needed to be able to provide humanitarian aid and basic needs of those populations also increase. So we're seeing humanitarian actors, government actors, other nonprofits like Project Hope working to gear up and provide additional resources and support to help protect the needs and humanitarian rights of those individuals.
OK, well, yeah, as you say, as the numbers go up, you need to supply more resources. What do you mean by that? What kind of thing?
Sure. So shelters have been attempting to expand, and we're looking at things like additional community health workers placed in the shelters, additional medical staff and volunteers to be able to screen and ensure that migrants are safe to be able to travel to their sponsor and their final destination. So all of those supports are needed in addition to the core supplies like food, water, sanitation, hygiene supplies to ensure that those folks have the basic essentials that they need and they're able to be safe during their journey.
And take all the politics out of it. This feels like there ought to be a better way of organising all this.
And I would again go back to the resources needed to be able to do that. There is a system in place, especially within the shelter networks, to be able to provide those supports. But we need the human resources, we need the volunteers, we need the hygiene kits and supplies, the clothing, all of those items that are needed to be able to support those individuals. But when we have limited resources and an influx of numbers, that's when you get more of a humanitarian crisis situation where the system is not able to meet those needs. And that's why organizations like Project Hope are working together with those local partners that are on the ground, providing that humanitarian aid to understand what those needs are and help to fill those gaps.
And when you're talking about the need for more resources, is that government funding?
It could be government funding, but also there's that government funding for the asylum process. But then once they're in the country, also there are additional needs to help support their health, their transportation again, because what we're seeing is the influx of individuals coming across the border, and then from there they get transportation to their designated sponsor, and there's a whole network of resources that are needed to help provide support and provide protection for the public's health as well as the health of the migrants throughout the course of that process. So it's supporting local NGOs and humanitarian organizations in addition to government resources to be able to provide support across all of the spectrum of that process.
Understood. Andrea, stay there. I'm going to come back to you in just a second, if that's OK. I want to bring in our panel now. John McTernan, former advisor to Sir Tony Blair, and the Republican politician Jennifer Carroll, who was the former 18th Lieutenant Governor of Florida. And this is a hugely complex issue, of course, with many potential solutions, both short-term and long-term, being suggested. But first of all, I just want to start with getting, I suppose, a human reaction. We're starting to see these pictures of so many people at the border there, and this is something that we're going to be keeping an eye on over the hours to come. But Jennifer Carroll, would you just start by giving us, I suppose, your human reaction to what we're seeing?
Well, the human reaction is that it is unfortunate that the drug cartels and the human smugglers have created such an influx and given such a hope of promise to these individuals that may not understand that there is a process of asylum to enter the country. So now, with all the months that have gone by, or actually the years have gone by, with people being able to either cross the border or get in illegally, now there's a land of promise that anyone feels that they can cross the border. But for every country, they should be able to maintain and control their borders, as well as the citizens of that country will be bearing the cost for the immigrants that are coming in. So fortunately, the Biden administration has taken a hold of this situation, and Secretary Mayorkas came out yesterday stating what the repercussions will be for those that do not meet the asylum claim. And that's what's important for us to educate people beforehand. And also to people that are coming through Mexico, it was that individuals, the first country they stepped into, that's where they should be claiming asylum, not 3 and 4 countries later.
Okay.
So we have to really get a hold of this border crisis issue.
John McTernan, can I turn to you? Of course, the US not unique in dealing with issues like this, but the scale is something else.
Yeah, look, on a human level, you have to feel for all of the individuals, the families, people who are fleeing dictatorships like Nicaragua, who are fleeing communal violence on a scale that would be intolerable if it was being applied in our own countries. And yes, there's a lot of displaced people in the world. There's lots of refugees and asylum seekers. And it's right to say that the US is different from the UK. One thing is that the US government are absolutely resolute in offering legal routes for people to come and offering quite substantial numbers of people coming legally from the Central American countries can come direct and fly direct to America. So there's an attempt to offer a path for refugee status, a path for asylum, a route that people can apply to, be safe and go through, and a route that doesn't involve you having to get entangled with the people smugglers, the cartels. And so I think that's a difference in the US. It's not simply, it's the greatest country in the world, and no wonder people want to go and live there. It's a beacon of hope for so many people who live in desperate countries in Central America. But the government under President Biden is moving from Title 42 to a programmed plan of bringing of legal routes to get there, which are the parallel to the quite punitive sanctions for people who try and enter illegally. So clearly, the deterrent is the punishment for being found to enter illegally, but the incentive is there's a legal route, a safe route. It's got to be, as your interview was saying, properly resourced, but the human fate of these individuals who are just looking to do what all of us want to do for ourselves and our families, which is build a better life for themselves, has to touch your heart, doesn't it?
Indeed. Andrea, if we can come back to you, the scale of what we're presuming is going to happen over the next couple of days may be quite significant. There will be a significant amount of disruption, to put it lightly. Are you concerned that this isn't just a couple of days whilst we switch effectively from one bit of legislation to another, but it could be an increased and growing problem that effectively makes itself worse just by increasing numbers, that then has a knock-on effect?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the underlying question, as some of the other panelists have mentioned, is the uncertainty. So humanitarian actors across the board are doing their best to be able to scale up, to be prepared for what those numbers could look like. But at the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether this is going to be a sharp increase in a short amount of time, if there's going to be a longer term, and what those levels and numbers will look like in the long term. So doing your best to try and prepare for and have resources available is a very significant challenge with that level of uncertainty. But I think we do know that it is going to be, generally speaking, a longer term situation, and just doing our best to be able to be prepared for those spikes and elevated numbers that's anticipated currently.
Andrea Dunne-Sosa, thank you very much for your time and talking to us on the programme. Thank you.